Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for the Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 4, The Foundling. Ignore that magic harp, I just realized that was there. Love this episode. First off, Ahmad Best, amazing. That was absolutely cool what they did there. For anyone who does not know, I have to talk about this because real world wise, this was the most important thing. Story wise, actually, it was also probably the most important thing in the episode, so it all fits together. Ahmed Best is the actor who is Jar Jar Binks. So depending on how old you are, you may or may not know exactly how that played out back in the day. As a kid, I saw it. I loved Star Wars when I was growing up. I watched the original trilogy a million times with the special editions. Actually, A New Hope special edition is the first movie I ever saw in theaters. So that's how I got here with being a giant nerd like this. So I've always loved Star Wars. Phantom Menace comes out, I was like, oh, Jar Jar, whatever. I was a kid. I try not to be a douchebag even now, but it was like, Jar Jar is not my favorite. He's no Darth Maul, that's for sure. But it was like, Jar Jar, whatever, no big deal. I kind of didn't love the character. I didn't hate the guy. There were people who were older, of course, who were just like crazy and just douchebags. And they were so bad to my best. And he was just slammed repeatedly. Obviously, he didn't make the character. It was George Lucas. He didn't write the dialogue. That was George Lucas. Like, nothing about the character except for, I guess, the voice. I'm sure he had like some input, of course, as he's an actor. But it's like I don't know. It's a weird thing. It even happens now, like in video games. Greatest example I can think of, most recent, is Last of Us Part 2. People were just like insane. It's like they hate a character in the game, and some people are just so stupid. It's like they will literally send death threats to the actor. It's like, I'm just doing a voice. I might be doing some mocap, but Jesus, it's insane to me how stupid people can be. So people were very horrible to Ahmad Best back in the day, and now we've had a lot of time, has passed, and people have gotten older and hopefully less douchey, and they realize it's really not that big of a deal. Yes, it's not the greatest thing ever, but man, Phantom Menace had a double-sided lightsaber. Everyone should love that movie, honestly. Darth Maul, oh, so good. Like, I don't know. That just like Darth Maul and Duel of the Fates should be like right at the top. Solely for that, people should just be like, you know what? It's pretty great. You can ignore everything bad about that movie, because as soon as he does this and Duel of the Fates hits and he ignites a double-sided lightsaber, everything is perfect. That is all you need in life, is that moment, and it's good. But people were pissed. People were just like really crappy to him for a super long time. And that's just how it was for a really long time. Like, he was just treated like crap, and it really did affect him. And he, more recently has gotten the respect that he really deserves for just being a human being, honestly, because people were just being douchebags about the character. Honestly, he just got the respect a normal human being deserves, and he's a part of the Star Wars world, and he's done other stuff. Before this, it was almost like Legends of the Hidden Temple, which, depending on how old you are, you know what that means. But they did like a cool kids Star Wars thing where it was like Legends of the Hidden Temple. It's hard to even explain what the F Legend of the Hidden Temple is if you never saw it. I don't even know. It's a game show, but it's so much more than that. It's just crazy. But just look up Star Wars Legend of the Hidden Temple. You'll probably find the name of the actual show. I can't remember what it is. But he was on that, and I was like, okay, when I first saw him, I thought that his outfit kind of looked like what he had in that show. It was probably just a different outfit. Unless they already had that design, and maybe I just saw it kind of in passing before. But when he first showed up, I was like, holy crap. I saw his name on Twitter and stuff, and I'll admit, I was thinking of Riz Ahmed when I read it, and then I saw like a thumbnail somewhere, and I was like, oh, okay, Ahmed Best. And then I was like, hold up. There's no way that he's the dude that ends up, saving Grogu. And of course, the episode kicks on. Elevator opens up. It's not like, it didn't seem like he was shocked or anything. It was just like, don't worry, kid. I got you. And he had him, because he went in there, he took the lightsaber, he's just deflecting like the whole way through. He's just like spinning dual wielding lightsabers, and it was amazing. Apparently Ahmed Best knows like 3 different forms of martial arts, which is why he was doing all of that. And it was like, that was just naturally his skill. He could just do it, and it was cool. So I was like, all right, that was super awesome to see him go through that. And then he lives, which was honestly the biggest surprise to me, because I was like, we kind of expected where it's like, oh, he has, Grogu has this moment of survival, but someone has to be sacrificed for that. Even though there were obviously nameless Jedi that were killed off, it's like you have someone who's really fighting to protect him, and then that person dies, and it's like, oh, that was like that last big loss, and then he, makes his grand escape. But the character lives. They both end up living. The Naboo guards that are there that have him get on the really cool silver ship, much like Princess Amidala, or Queen Amidala, sorry. They all end up being taken down, but ultimately, I can't remember, I think Killian is his name, is the character's name, and I think his name, he has like a nickname that's like super cool. I forgot what it was, but if you watch like the Kind of Funny review, one of the guys that's on there that reviews that, he actually helped kind of do a lot of stuff where they built up that character, so he knows a lot of in-depth stuff about that character because he was around when they like first introduced that character into the lore. So definitely check out that, because I would highly recommend it, just so you have like that extra backstory, especially if you don't know anything about how horrible Ahmed Best was treated just back in the day. So definitely check out that review and look up a bunch of stuff. Like there's footage all over the place of just how crappy people were to him back in the day, because they really did not like Jar Jar. So it was great to see him have this moment where, you know, he'd already been treated well, you know, by Disney. He's been treated much better by fans who were not just horrible people. So it was really cool to have not only kind of the respect that he's been getting in general, but to have this really epic moment, even for people that don't know, they got to be like, well, this dude was super cool. I mean, let's face it, he came in single-handedly, was just dual wielding, just didn't have to like be up close to anybody and actually like fighting or anything, just deflecting 100%, spinning, dodging, and just deflecting left and right. And it was like, and you know, he did use the force push, which, let's face it, if you played any Star Wars game and you had a force push, you did exactly what he did at least 1,000 times, because it's like, oh, you shouldn't be near that ledge, boom, you're gone. That's like the coolest thing in the world in every Star Wars game ever. Everyone, if you can force push somebody off a ledge, you've done it, and you know you have, because it's the best thing in the world. So that was cool to see, because I was like, been there, buddy. So love the whole flashback. It was great to see, just in general, like it was a great moment story-wise, because we've been teased with that really early on. It's officially another Order 66 moment that we actually get to see, like, you know, a full sequence of. It was great because it was Ahmed Best getting like just an epic appreciation moment where it's like they made him, you know, actually the character already existed, but it was like they gave him this epic moment. It was like, that's super cool. So I, you know, even though I don't know like all the in-depth stuff, I was like, that's awesome. Like, you know, he definitely deserved that, especially for the shit that he got for no good reason from people who were just mean for no good reason. So it was great to see that for a lot of different reasons. And I was just super happy with that. So it was very cool. And of course they both live. So it's like, what happened? Does his character die? Would he ever, you know, like if he lived all the way through or from Order 66 all the way to now, which is after Return of the Jedi, there's a lot there. That's a lot of time to pass. Like, would they bring him back, you know, with some old guy makeup and stuff like that? Will, you know, how long do we have to wait to get the rest of that story and what eventually led Grogu to end up at, you know, basically the end of the first episode? So there's so much there, like the end of the first episode, and then, like I said, going all the way back to Revenge of the Sith. That's a lot of time in between. How did he get with those bandits, you know? So there's still a whole lot of questions as to what happened after, but we got the official moment, who saved him during Order 66 and got him out of the temple and off of Coruscant. And they went somewhere. I would assume they went to Naboo, because obviously the guys were there. So I assume that that's exactly where they went. That makes the most sense, is that they went straight to Naboo. But there, you know, still there's just so many questions up in the air just for the amount of time that passed since then. So I'm sure we'll have to wait for that if we get it at all. But I thought it was definitely amazing. It was probably, it was the best part of the episode. And that's, which is crazy, because it was the best part of the episode, and then the rest of the episode was still really, really good, because the beginning of the episode was super cool. And it was like, all right, they're, you know, back at the cove, everybody's training, we got all the Mandalorians on the beach, which I don't know why they're on this beach. I like, at this point, like, it's not a vacation destination, it don't look that great. I don't know how maybe they just can't leave. They don't seem to have any ships. Like, it seems to only be Bo-Katan and Din are like the only two people who have actual ships, because we don't see where they would have any ships landed or in any way, shape, or form. They have not shown a ship. When the thing, I'm gonna call it the dragon swoops up the kid, they fly out on their jetpacks, and it's like, man, it always gets away because we always run out of fuel. I'm like, if you can say that, in my head, that's like at least a handful of times this thing just was like, there's a kid, and then it just took a kid and they couldn't follow. After it happens like the second time, the first time, okay, second time it happens and you can't chase the thing because it's too far away and you guys aren't just going to go after it, you need to pack it up and leave, because you guys have sci-fi alligator megalodons just bursting out the water. It takes 2 seconds. They're like, oh, something's coming, 2-second warning, the thing pops out of the water and starts just chewing down on people. You don't have a safe space. Clearly, things can pop out of the water in half a second. You don't have that much warning. You can't defend yourself. Things come out of the sky just swooping down, picking up kids like the tiny little dogs. Why are they there? It's not that good. Clearly, it's not that safe. But that's where they are. We see everybody training. We saw 2 people had the Beskar spears. I thought that was cool. I wish we got to see more of that. I'm definitely like a huge staff person that comes from Ninja Turtles and loving Donatello, but I love a person using the bow staff and stuff, and yeah, obviously those were spears. But I wish we got to see just a little bit more of that before he melted it down. I was like, dang, I really like that. I like that look where it was like always kind of like on his shoulder. So it's unfortunate that died off so fast. I was very sad about that when they did that in the Book of Boba Fett. And I was like, dang, they're getting rid of the spear already. I was like, I like that look. I thought that was pretty sick. So it was unfortunate for me personally. I was like, dang, he lost that. He doesn't have his rifle. Like, he doesn't have his old ship. The new ship is better. I don't care. So old ship can die. Like Razor Crest, I'm sorry, not as cool as the N1 Starfighter. It's just not. But sad to see the Beskar spear go. But it was cool to see some people in the background. They had it. Everyone just, once again, I don't know what they were doing, where they were just shooting out on the water. If you have an explanation, please tell me, because I'm like, why are they shooting on the water? Like the people with the blasters, it was like, okay, they could be shooting at like the rocks on the other side or something like that. I doubt that, because they were just standing and shooting. 2 of those people were CG, by the way. In the wide shot, it was like these 2 people on the left, clearly CG. I don't know if it just looked super empty and they were like, you gotta put like 2 fake people in there or something, because I'm like, I'd rather they not be there, because they look super CG, and they do it when they do like another sweep across the front of the beach. The person on the end is still a CG person. It had to be, because it wasn't a real person in general, I guess. So they just were never there. But it was just like this, the stiff movements and stuff. I was like, it's really a CG person. And if not, they really look like a fake person, and that's crazy. It wouldn't be the first time that happened with, like the Last of Us season finale. If you saw that, you probably know the moment I'm talking about, but I won't spoil it just in case. But there's this moment there where I was like, I can't tell, is that real or is that CG? That was this. I was like, except I was 100% like, that's CG. And if it's not, that person looks like a CG human being, which is wild. But could have just been the movements, but I'm almost 100% certain, like with the way the movements were kind of like locked in place, I was like, that's a CG person. So maybe just looked empty, and so they're like, you have to throw some people in there. But thought that was weird. They're just shooting on the water, like, and plus the people shooting missiles, it was like the people shooting blasters, okay, you got a blaster, we'll just say it's an infinite blaster. Missiles are not infinite though. I know they weren't like the whistling birds, that's very different, but still, you're shooting on rockets, and I'm like, they can't have that many resources that they can just like blast rockets. They're not even, like I said, it wasn't even target practice, they were just shooting. So unless it was to be like, how far are my rockets going? Are they actually blowing up with the right consistency? Like, is my gear working? Like, I guess you could be testing the gear, I guess, but it just felt so weird. I was like, they're just shooting into the water. It made no sense, unless that's their new defense mechanism to make sure the alligator doesn't shoot out the water. Maybe like, just like, let's just, practice shooting into the water, I guess. I don't know, but I thought that was weird. But you see people fighting with the vibro blades and training and this and that. Grogu, of course, is sitting with the rocks. They make it seem like he's using the force at first, and then it turns out those rocks are all just a bunch of crabs. Din walks up to him. Also, during that sequence, I didn't notice this the first time. The second time I saw the episode, though, I noticed that when he's walking towards Grogu in the background, there's a moment where his cape just like clips out of existence for like half a second, or actually in the half a second, it clips out of existence, and then it's just gone. And then he goes off screen, because I assume he was fully CG. I even thought that when I first saw it, even though I didn't notice the cape kind of vanishing, but he goes off screen, and I was like, he must be CG, because it didn't make sense to have, if he was actually back there, it was like, we clearly, if we can see him, that means point A to point B, it's a straight line. He can just go from the back of the camera, or from the background to the foreground, and he's there. But instead he came, and then he like kind of walked off to the side and disappeared, and then came back around, and he was just in front of Grogu. So I was like, okay, that was definitely like a CG model. So maybe it was just a random issue where it was like 2 parts of the rig just kind of messed up for a second there, and that's why the cape just randomly disappeared during that little moment. So that was just something I noticed. Like I said, I didn't even see it on the on first viewing. It was something I noticed the second time around, but I could tell he was CG the first time, like I said, because it was like, it doesn't make sense. Like, why is he walking off screen and then coming back on? Classic case of CGI. That's what that like, that's what that means. But it was really cool, like him putting Grogu into the little training, I was about to say training pit, but like just the little battleground, I guess. And it's like, all right, it's time for you to train. If you are ever going to go from a foundling to an apprentice, which I thought was cool that they have different ranks, because I don't think they referenced that before. It was like, I think for us, it was always, you're a foundling and then boom, you're a Mandalorian, but they do have different levels. It makes sense, but I don't think they actually ever said that before. So I thought that was pretty cool. But it was like, if he's going to go from a foundling to an apprentice, he does have to actually train. And they drop a bunch of little moments here and there throughout this episode. Like, here's how we deal with this thing. Here's how we deal with that thing. My stupid broken chair, I can feel it like slightly moving down. So throughout the episode, they have little bits and pieces, and it mostly comes from either, you know, like the young boy in the beginning of the episode where it was like, you know, why doesn't he have his helmet? And then Din is like, well, he's too young to actually recite the code, so he's not allowed to have the helmet yet. But of course, he still has to train to even get to the point where he's allowed to recite it. So I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then they have some stuff later on where they eat the food, and Bo-Katan's like, hey, you know, how do you eat in front of other people? And it was funny when she asked that, because it dawned on me that he's never eaten on the show. He drank stuff. And so when he lifts his helmet up, he's just drinking stuff. And I was like, it was when she first said, I was like, oh, that's weird. She's asking like he eats, like he just ate in front of her 2 episodes ago. And then I was like, holy crap. He's never eaten anything on the show. He's only drank stuff. Like he did, I think he technically ate something in the first season. Even then, when he took his helmet off, when they did like the one episode where he was like kind of falling in love with that lady from season 1, I don't think he was even eating anything in that episode either. I think he took his helmet off, but I think he just had like a cup and he was drinking something. So it was kind of funny. I was like, holy crap, we've never actually seen him eat anything because he doesn't take his helmet off. He's never actually eating food. Like he's always drinking something. And that's when we see him like just, you know, do the very clearly uncomfortable head tilt backwards to drink something. So I thought that was funny when she asked that, but then it was like, holy crap, he hasn't been eating. That's just him drinking stuff. So they all take off to go to their own locations. And then right after that, we find out from Paz Vizsla that because Bo-Katan was like the basically the general of that the planet they had to rescue, who we find out later is his son, she gets to stay by the fire. Like that's her honor because she's like the war leader in that moment. And I was like, well, that's a cool little thing as well. And then right after that, they had another cool moment where I don't know if it was intentional, and it was definitely something that just in my head was very interesting. Actually, there were 2 moments. It was when Din first says like they can't take off their helmets even when they eat. The first thing that came to my mind was, do they have exceptions for people that are married? Which they have to, because of course later we find out that the kid who was taken is Paz Vizsla's son. So they have to have an exception, or that's really, really funny that they don't. So either they do or they don't, and they have sex with the helmets on, and that's hilarious to think about, but they have to have those exceptions. There have to be exceptions. So after that, when she's eating, she has to eat alone. And I thought that was so interesting, where she's become a part of the clan. And, you know, even, you know, by the end, they say like, you know, you've done basically the greatest thing any Mandalorian can do, which is save a foundling, save a child. And with all of that, with her, you know, kind of joining, you know, the way, we'll call it, just being a part of this crew that she always saw as like the weird offshoot sect that she was technically kind of a part of back in the day. It was really interesting because it was like that camaraderie that they have and the rules that they follow, that hierarchy, and just the honor that they have amongst themselves is still very solitary. They're very unified, but at the same time, it's like you can't even eat together. And, you know, I don't know if there's, you know, exceptions to that rule as well, as far as, you know, once again, being married and things like that. But it was like they're all going off to save this child, and they're, you know, kind of hunkering down for the night. And it's like, yep, you stay by the fire because, you know, you're the leader of, you know, kind of the plan that we're enacting right now. And the rest of us, where there's like nearly a dozen people, we'll just scatter. And then, you know, when we're completely alone, that's when we take off our helmets, and that's when we eat. And I just thought that was so interesting. It was like, man, that's a camaraderie that they have and an honor to each other. Yet something as simple as eating as a unit or eating as a family is not possible. They can, you know, do the uncomfortable head tilt around each other and get drunk maybe, but they can't eat food with each other. And I was like, that's fascinating. That was just an interesting little thing. So I enjoyed all the little tidbits of information, you know, that we got about the clan, which is, you know, definitely cult-like, but, you know, we see the inner workings and how they feel about all this stuff. So that was definitely cool. Them, you know, doing the little battle where Grogu, of course, you know, he gets hit twice, and then it's like, hey, you know, it's cool to show them what you can do. And then he does this weird puppet flip back and forth, and then boom, boom, boom. And he, of course, wins the battle. And I thought that was interesting. You know, they had the moment where before, when Din is answering the kid's questions, where it's like, you know, this is why he doesn't have the helmet. He's like, well, if he doesn't have the helmet, he can't recite the creed, then he's too young to fight. And then it's like, I forgot exactly what the line was. It was like, those who don't know aren't allowed to speak, or something like that. And the kid was like, well, I know. And then Din was just like, well, then I guess this is your lesson. And it clearly was, because he lost. And I was like, okay, that's an interesting little moment there. But everything was super cool. And of course, when they first take off on the mission, that's when we get the epic flashback. All of that was amazing. Then we have an insane battle where they get to the top of the mountain, which, I talked about it before with Din dropping in the water, and I was like, he must be like superhuman for the Beskar armor to make him sink as fast as it did when he dropped in the water. But maybe they actually are superhuman, because Paz Vizsla must be. This dude had an actual Gatling gun on his back with the extra big backpack, because he's obviously a bigger dude. And it was just like, okay, yeah, I'll just boom, grapple hook, and I'll just pull myself up like it's nothing. Like it's nothing to just pull yourself up with your arms. It takes a lot of strength to do that. And everybody was just like, yep, we're doing it, and we're just going up a mountain. No big deal. I was like, if there's one thing they can do is look cool by doing something simple, and they will go climb a mountain to save a child. And it was a pretty sweet moment. Of course, they find out that the heat signature, when they get to the top, is not his son, which big revelation there, but it ends up being one of the little dragons. And then the big dragon comes back, regurgitates the kid, which blew my mind, because I was like, oh, it's doing, like for anyone who does not know this, birds actually do that. They will, mama birds will chew up the food, and then they spit out. It's gross, but they spit it back up for the babies, because the babies can't chew the food yet. Very funny how much they have to do when they're babies, as far as like how they chew the food for the babies. But when they have to fly, it's like, bitch, fly. That's how birds learn to fly. It's like, either you do or you don't. Get out this tree. That's how they do it. But they'll chew up their food and feed it to them because they can't eat yet. Very funny. It's just life. It's very interesting. So they have a crazy sequence where the kid gets spit up, fully alive, fully intact, completely whole, and he just comes out like screaming. And I was like, huh. I didn't expect the kid to be in the bird's mouth. He was just there all night. Like, I don't understand how he's really alive. But it was like, okay, didn't see that coming. And then of course they have the crazy sequence. They chase it through the sky. They're like trying to stab the thing, and everybody's getting flung around and stuff. Bo-Katan loses one of her pauldrons. Paz Vizsla, he ends up getting knocked off, and he kind of hits the side of a mountain. Din and a bunch of other people, they're like shooting zip lines to basically wrap its mouth up, and they end up doing that. And then I think Din shoots like one last one when he's able to like shoot past, and he gets in front of it, and then he shoots back and hits one of the wings and basically squeezes it together so it can't fly well. He gets the kid, the dragon falls into the water, and then here comes the crazy megalodon shark thing from the first episode, kills that. And I was like, man, full circle. Also, they just killed all those babies' moms or dad, whatever. I think it's always the mama bird that does that, so we'll say they killed its mom. And then they took those kids, and now they have dragons, because of course they were always running out of fuel trying to fly really far from the weird cave that they're in. I'm still trying to figure this planet out, or moon, I think technically. So now they're gonna have these three things, which depending on what they do, I mean, they can say they grow super quick, I guess, if they just want to be like, after 3 episodes later, they're flying on these bad boys. So they could do that if they want to, but they have those for later. And I was like, all right, this was a crazy episode, jam-packed for 34 minutes. Because even after the end of the flashback, it was like, holy crap, there's 17, well, with credits, we'll say there's 12 and a half minutes. We'll say that. But when I saw the time, it said 17 and a half minutes. And I was like, holy crap. It was like a really filling meal. It was very, smaller portions than what you would expect, but it was very fulfilling. And it was just like, man, this was a great episode. So absolutely loved it. Of course, the action was really good in 2 parts, flashback and present day. Bo-Katan talks to the armor, at the very end when she gets the new pauldron, and she ends up getting, I almost said the Mudhorn signet, which is what Din has. Also, Grogu now has that as well, because she put like the little medallion. It's basically a medallion on him because he's so tiny, which I thought was super funny. And I'm very curious, like, what was the circuitry? Like, what does that do in relation to when you have like a full piece of armor? Like, what circuitry could that possibly do outside of just being like a magnet or something? Like, it was just interesting. So he has like this big thing like Flavor Flav because he's so tiny. That's what it looks like. But at the very end, Bo-Katan is like, well, could I have one of the Night Owls and then one of the Mythosaur? And so then she talks to her and is like, I saw the Mythosaur, like legit, the thing is real. And the armor was just super cool about it. It was just like, this is the way. And it's like, crazy stuff's been happening, I guess. What are you gonna do with that, Bo-Katan? And she kind of just walks out. She's kind of just like, that's pretty sick, dude. And then just leaves. Like, it's not like she just made it seem like it was no big deal. And it's just like, it's a great vision. She says like it's a great vision as far as a dream, but then it's like to actually have seen one, it's just like, okay, dude, balls in your court. Like that's kind of how it felt to me, where she was just like, this is the way. and she just leaves. She just kind of leaves her in her own thoughts. I was like, that's very interesting to not have much of a reaction, considering how serious they are about everything, containing sticking to the ways of the initial Mandalorians. It was just like, that was an oddly calm answer for her to just be like, I guess it is what it is. Like, that's a huge deal. Like, she's like, no, it was there. Like, I'm telling you, I saw the thing. And she was super calm about it. So I don't know if that'll actually come back into play later. I mean, obviously it will for sure overall, but I don't know if specifically for the armor, if she'll have a different reaction later. Like, man, thinking back on that, that's wild. She told me she saw a mythosaur. Like, I don't know. She was so calm about it. I'm like, I don't know how to even process your emotions in this moment, because you're super calm. That was weird to me. But love the way it was handled. I like the new pauldron and stuff like that. Of course, I love symmetry and all that good stuff. But it was like, okay, let's see where this goes. Because I was curious, like, if her armor would end up changing or anything like that. And now we have like this first little piece, and it's like, maybe they'll add more changes to her costume. We'll see something new. So love the episode for sure. Definitely surprising that in 34 minutes, they did such an amazing job as far as story and action on two fronts, which is really cool. Also, Carl Weathers directed this episode, of course, the High Magistrate himself. So that was very cool. I think this is only the second episode that he directed. I think the last one he did was last season, and it was that episode where they go to that Imperial like power plant or whatever that was like right outside the city, which was another amazing episode where it was like, oh man, he's leaving the main story behind. And then that episode ended up being like an effing movie when I first watched it. I was like, holy crap, this is like, they had speeder bikes in it, which, right under the Darksaber. It's speeder bikes. I love me some speeder bikes. So love that episode. And I think Carl Weathers did that one as well. So did a great job in this. I love the visuals and everything. But all in all, another great episode. We're also halfway through the season. I didn't realize that until this episode, where I was like, let me look at season 1 and 2. And it was like 8 episodes. And I was like, holy crap. Because we're only on episode 20 in terms of like the entire series, which is insane to me after how long it's been since the show initially came out. And it's just like, wow, the 8 episodes, which means we're halfway through. So I'm very curious what's going to happen in these next 4 episodes. They've definitely done it. It's not an anthology season, but that's almost how it feels. Like, it's clearly like got a through line story as far as like, this is legit just who the Mandalorians are, and this is their history and stuff. Like, this is really this is almost like one of those seasons that's like, for most shows, I feel like it's the down season where it's like, all right, we kind of have to reboot the show a little bit, which is kind of what they're doing in this season. But in this, it's way more entertaining, which probably super biased because I love Mandalorians as is. So it's like some stuff they're just retelling that I already know anyway, and then a lot of other stuff is new. So it's kind of one of those weird seasons where it's like, all right, we're kind of bringing the show back to life. We're going into like the next phase of what the series is going to be. Except it's a really great season, not just because of the action. Personally, I love the lore, but once again, super biased because I love Mandalorian stuff. But the last episode I really enjoyed as well, because it's like, well, what the F are they teasing with all of that stuff on Coruscant? Which they also, they went back to like the peak of the mountain. Again, they did that. I was like, oh, that's kind of funny that they did that, 2 episodes in a row. So, obviously they're teasing something with that. I don't know if we should ever expect to see Moff Gideon pop in, but we only got 4 episodes left. We have, the crossover stuff happening. We haven't hit our cameo yet. So it's happening. It's somewhere in there. Ahsoka's most, I assume it's going to be Ahsoka, but Ahsoka's probably popping up. I don't know if we should expect to see Boba Fett. Like, they already shot back to Tatooine and then flew, right back off. So I don't know if we should expect to see Boba Fett. I don't know if we should anticipate anything from Cobb Vanth or anything like that, but we got a cameo coming. There's going to be some crossover thing somewhere, and I'm excited to see. I don't know the length of, the next couple episodes either, but I'm definitely looking forward to, whatever we have next. I've loved every single episode in one way or another. Like, even the last episode, I think, was probably my least favorite, just because it did spend so much time on Coruscant, not so much the Mandalorians, but I still enjoyed just the way that story was told and just being like, all right, well, what does this mean? Because Moff Gideon's gone, right? And yet here we have someone who's still dealing with the evil, like, Imperial stuff, and maybe they're starting to lead into like those super early interpretations of what eventually becomes the First Order. So I don't know what to expect with that, but we don't really have our big bad, not just yet. Slightly teased from the last episode, so I'm definitely looking forward to, like, what are they going to push? And only 4 more episodes, what are they going to push on the villain front as far as what comes next, or possibly who comes back and in what way? So looking forward to all of that stuff. Definitely enjoyed this episode. Of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about it, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. Because I never do this, I have to. Super shameless plug. Tonight, by the time you guys see this, tonight, it'll be like midnight, so technically tomorrow. But I'm going to be streaming the Resident Evil 4 remake when it comes out. I'm super excited about that. So definitely check that out if you guys are interested in Resident Evil. I will be playing that, talking about all of my love for Resident Evil. It's above Star Wars for me. Resident Evil is my #1 franchise. So if you want to see me nerd out about that, like I can nerd out about Star Wars, definitely join me there because I love me some Resident Evil and I cannot wait to see what they change for this remake. But would greatly appreciate if you guys check out my streaming channel. All the information in the description below. But in general, want to know what you guys think about this episode. Halfway through, what do you guys want to see? What do you guys expect to see? Where are we headed planet wise? Are we just going to stay on this effing beach that is clearly unsafe? I just don't know. We'd love to know your thoughts on everything, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.